Welcome to Feminine Roadmap Podcast. I'm your host, Gina Farrar. Each week, I bring you an inspiring conversation to help you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife so that you can not only survive, but thrive in your second half. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It's Gina here, and today our conversation is going to be powerful. We are going to be talking about finding love after loss. My guest today is Susan S. Etkin. She's a reader and a writer. She has written the book, And Now There's You. And she has a passion to talk to women about how they can suffer loss and still find love again. So I want to welcome Susan to the show today. Thank you, Susan, for saying yes to me.
Well, thank you for asking me.
It is my pleasure. Now, the conversation we had before we hit record, you let me know a little bit about your story, but why don't you take some time and why don't you let my tribe know what it is that brought you to share this story? What happened in your life that led you to this point?
Okay, thanks, Gina. Well, in my own family, I mentioned that my mother was a widow at 41. I have a younger sister who became a widow at 21. And myself, I became very unexpectedly a widow at 58 years old. So, but I'm a romantist and I am an optimist. So what I decided to do was, and I love to read and write, as you mentioned. So I wanted to write a book that was fun, that was optimistic, but it dealt with finding love after loss and the struggles that a widow had after she lost her husband. So that's what started me thinking, and it took a while for me to get the book together. Obviously, it's a fiction, it's a romance, and there is a lot of me in that book. I have to admit that there's a lot of me in that book, and I'm hoping that people will pick it up and they'll read it and they'll enjoy the story and they'll say, hey, if Lila can find her Aiden, maybe I can too.
So where are you at in your journey now, Susan? So when you lost your husband at 58, what was that like for you and what journey did you have to take?
Well, it was very devastating, but when you are taking care of someone who is ill for a number of years, it's odd, but in some ways there's a short period of relief that, you know, you're not getting up every day and driving an hour to the hospital and sitting there all day long, that kind of thing. And you feel that burden lift from your shoulders for just a very short time. And then it sets in that, oh my goodness, I'm 58 years old, or I'm 21, or I'm 41, or whatever the age is. And I have to live the rest of my life alone without someone to care for me or share things with me. At the time that I lost my husband, the savior for me was that I was working and I had a demanding job. I was teaching at a secondary school and working with adolescents, who the age group that I loved. And that I invested all my time into that job. And that was very helpful. I didn't sit around the house and think about it all day long. It's not that it didn't invade my thoughts that my husband, whose name was Ken, wasn't around anymore, but that I tried to invest all my emotions and energies into the kids, into the adolescent kids, and avoid that caring, that they became sort of my companions. And that was where it first started. But then it gets very lonely. You are invited to weddings and other events, and all of a sudden you're going to them yourself. And you're at a wedding and sitting at a table, and the dances start, and you're the only one at the table, and everyone else is on the dance floor. So I learned very early that it's a couple's world. You know, you go places, it's always as a couple. You never see somebody going to the theater by themselves. It's usually couples, on each side. Not to say that people don't do that, but in general, most people don't go alone. So that's a very hard thing to go through, that aloneness, that being by yourself. But I had friends, I have children and grandchildren, so there is that kind of a companionship, but it is not the same as having a mate. And that's what I was trying to stress. Now, I do feel that divorce or being in a long-term relationship that ends is very, very similar. You feel the same things. And then I started to examine myself, and I thought, well, what could I do to better my situation? And I tried to be a little bit more outgoing, a little bit more adventurous, asking people if they'd like to do something. Where before I was being asked to join something, I tried to do that. And but I love romance, and I read a lot of books that were romantic, but I found that many of those romance books were for younger age groups. They were for the 20s and the 30s who were just starting out and exploring and meeting new people, and they were very hopeful because their whole life was ahead of them. And that's when I decided to write this book, to look at someone who is what I believe midlife, and someone in their 50s that has lost a mate, and she has children, and she is going to be a grandmother. And she's very active in her career, and she's invested her energies into that career. And that's how it started. So there is a lot of me and my experience in the character Lila. I had an interior design business for 10 years. She's an interior designer. I had a partner in that business. Much of that partner is seen in Michelle in the book. So it's not that I completely made this up, but I was drawing from stories that people had told me who were divorced or who were widowed, and my own, and I sort of melded those ideas into this book. So I'm hoping people who are at a loss now, they have lost their mate, whether it's through divorce or it's just a breakup or it is an unfortunate death, that they pick up the book and they get a lift out of it. There's humor in it. And that they find some hope that they may indeed find someone else to share their life with.
Now, your husband, you were telling me, actually had cancer. Now, how long did he have cancer, and what was that part of your journey like? Like, did you experience levels of grief? How did you navigate that part of your journey?
Well, it was actually quite a shock because he was a health person. He liked to exercise and watch what he ate, and very, very into what he weighed, what he looked like. There was a vanity there, I believe, but that was good because it kept him healthful. But the one thing that he did do that wasn't healthful, that early in our marriage, early when we met, he smoked a pipe. And I don't know if that his cancer was prostate cancer. And I would say that he had it for 5 years. We didn't know enough about prostate cancer in the early 2000s. We were just looking at that PSA rating that was supposed to be 4 and under, and we didn't realize that the change was more important than the number. So he might have ignored this a little bit, but it was something we went through for 4 years. And I looked at him initially in the beginning. I thought, well, he'll beat this because he's a healthy guy. He's out there exercising, and he's he liked to do things around the house. He was an engineer. I thought, well, modern science, we're gonna beat this. Well, we didn't. And the last year was the roughest because he was a very handsome gentleman. And I saw him decline, and he went from a vibrant person to look like someone who was, 20 years, 30 years older than he actually was. And he was only 59. So one day it just dawned on me. all of a sudden this thought came, you're going to lose him. He is going to die. And I had negated that. I had said, no, that's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen to him. And then all of a sudden it hit me. And then I looked at him and saw that decline coming, and pictures of him, maybe just a couple years before, how different he looked. And I realized, uh-oh, I am going to be alone, and I better be prepared for that. And so I would say, if someone is with someone who is unfortunately going to die from whatever malady they're dealing with, that you need to set up things and be prepared for that time when it happens, that you are not floundering through life, but that everything is set up. And the kind thing that he did was, he did do that. He had a little notebook. He set up everything. We have 2 boys. He called the boys in. He showed, this is what your mother is going to have. This is what she's going to need, and it was all taken care of prior to his passing. And that was the best gift, because I didn't feel that I was out there and not knowing what to do. Then there were many years that went by after that I will confess I could not see myself with another man. Women or friends or family members would say, oh, I met this guy. I think you'd like him. And I just was not courageous enough to attempt that. I had to be, I did try the dating sites, and many of my experience, well, a couple of them are in the book. And I have taken a hiatus from that right now. But it was I felt like I had to market myself, and I wanted to be very truthful on the website. And there were a couple experiences that were a little devastating there. It's different than when you're a young college girl, which is what I was when I married my husband. It's a whole different world out there. So I could not see myself with another man. And I think that's a common thing. I have a feeling that you just can't jump out there, right away. I would say that we had a good marriage, and we were very happy with one another, and we were very attracted to one another. But maybe that had something to do with it. If he were not the husband he was, perhaps I would be more open. But at that time, I could not see it. And that lasted a very, very long time. And then one day, I was at the gym, and a rather handsome gentleman and I were fighting over access to a machine, to an exercise machine. And then we got to talking, and he was very attractive, and he was very kind, and he moved away, and I got a hold of the machine, and I sat down there, and I looked at him as he walked away, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm attracted to this man. I'm having a rebirth here. There's an awakening. There's a stirring. I might like to go out with another guy. I might like to explore a relationship like that. So I believe that it does happen, not to everyone. I have met people who said, my husband was the love of my life, and there's no one else I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And they're very committed to that. There's a sense of loyalty, I think, from their perspective. And I can appreciate that, because I went through that. Until that day when that was like, oh, that was a really cute guy. That was a really cute guy. So grief has that, I'm going to be by myself and brood. Okay, I'm going to try to go out there and be a little bit more outgoing and fun to be with, and things like that. And I also thought of health issues, because there I was by myself, and I had 2 children, and they have families, and I wanted to be there for them. I was helpful in babysitting. They both were working, and I was sort of at a semi-retired, and I had more time on my hands to help them out. And I felt that, okay, I want to be the healthy person. I want to I never smoked, but that doesn't mean I couldn't get cancer. And so there's that reflection period where you think about, well, can I make my life better? Can I be healthier? And I think part of that was attractiveness. Can I be as an attractive person from the inside out? Can I be attractive, that people want to be with me, or can I also do the best I can for myself? And so that all sort of was weaving in, and it's a long road. It's not a very easy road, but it is a long road, but you can get there. And it can be fulfilling if you find that person. It's possible. Okay, so I have to admit that I have not found that person yet. But that doesn't mean I'm not looking to, or that I'm not going to be active about it. But a couple of years, this book was in the making, and that's where a lot of my energies went. And so I'm trying to say to people, please be optimistic. You're here. Life is a gift, and you should live it, and go out there and see who might be waiting for you.
I was thinking through your process, and when you are a caregiver, there's a lot of emotional and physical burden that you carry when you care for someone, and it's easy to lose yourself in a process like that. Did you find yourself needing to utilize self-care? Did you do that? Did you not do that? And how did that journey of going from caregiver to single woman, how did you care for yourself emotionally and physically during that process?
Well, at first, it's complete sacrifice, Now, I did work during the time that my husband was ill, and it really was only in the last 6 months that he was unable to work, and he was unable to, so even though it was a 4 or 5 year period, he was still working and functioning and contributing, to society. He was an engineer, and he loved his job. He worked for General Electric, and he was initially schooled as an aerospace engineer, and had worked his way into other positions in the company. And we moved around a lot because of the different locations. But so for a great part of that process, we were living, we weren't in denial per se, but we were living a regular life and doing our thing. So it wasn't that I was completely disregarding my own health, or taking care of myself, or our home, or anything like that. But there was a time when we went to the doctors, and I saw the decline in him. I saw it visually. He didn't look like the husband that I had 4 years earlier. And the doctor said, I'm sorry, Mr. Etkin, but there's nothing more we can do for you. We've done all that we can. And then I walked out into the hallway, and I said, oh my goodness, I need help. This is the first time I felt like I really needed someone to guide me through this. And I dialed the social services office of the hospital at the time. It was Fox Chase, which is out in Philadelphia. And I said, please, I just gotten a very bad report on my husband. I'm standing outside in the hallway, outside the room where the doctors and nurses are with him. And I am at a loss. I need help. I don't know where to go from here. He was given maybe 3 months to live. Please help me. And immediately someone came down and took me aside, and we went through the options. I knew I couldn't care for him at home because he was starting to be unable to walk. We lived in a 2-story house. This is really the first time I remember that I actually admitted to myself that I needed help. I didn't know where to go from here. And I had to navigate a very rough sea. And I wanted help. And they came right down and discussed everything with me. And what we finally decided to do was to go into a hospice that was a very nice place where it was like a large, old, ancient mansion that was converted into a small, intimate hospice. And right from there, We got into an ambulance and we were taken there. And that was devastating, because that I had to break it to sisters, to a mother, his mother, to my children, who just was not accepting that their robust father was ever going to die, and not at this age. He was going to die. And but that's another thing. You need to be able to say, I need help. And there are people there who are trained to help you, and not to think that you're weak because you're asking for help, or that there's something wrong with you, that you in your character, or that is not enabling you to handle this on your own, but that there is a need. You need, and it's not just your family, we'll come and we'll bring dinner or something like that. You need that professional guidance, whether it's a therapist, a social service counselor, who's gone through it countless times, and they know what to say and advise you. And so I did finally reach that point where I wasn't even crying like at that point yet. I was, oh my God, I need help. I don't know where I'm going. And so I urge people to seek that help. It is a lifesaver. It is a lifesaver. So that's where I was at that point. And then it was getting up every day, going to a hospice and thinking nothing's going to happen. He's sitting here and we're eating meals together and people are visiting. And then you get a call from the hospice and saying signs are indicating that death is near, and we're going to move your husband to a special room called the angel room, and that you are going to have no one else going in and out of that room except you want. And they play classical, soft, peaceful music, and it's a serene setting, but it's surreal. It's like, oh, where am I? This can't possibly be happening. And that's how he ended his life. And in this bed, in this room, and he was dressed in a t-shirt and gym pants. I remember, because they would come in and, groom him every morning. And he looked, young, a young man, not, obviously there were traces, his hair had turned gray and his face had thinned out, but that's how it was. And then all the family came in and we had a little service. Someone said some prayers, and that was it. And at that point, I might have mentioned to you before, there is an odd feeling of relief. There's a burden off your shoulders. You think that, oh, it's over. But that's just a short respite. The grief starts after that, when you go home and you're pulling into that driveway and you're pulling your car in and it's an empty house and it's dark, and you're going up into your bedroom and you look into your closet and there's all these guy clothes hanging there, and you're thinking to yourself, there's no guy to fill those clothes. So it's a very, then the grief starts. And obviously the funeral is supposed to be helpful, get you through that. But it's that loneliness does set in, and you aren't very hopeful at that point. You are down on yourself, You think I even thought to myself, well, if I married that other guy that I was dating at the time, he's alive now, I wouldn't be a widow, I wouldn't have lost my mate. You start to think things like that. But then that passes, and your friends are very helpful for the first year. They're there for you. They're calling you. They're taking you places. And then they get back to their lives, and then you fall back into a routine. You go to work, you come home, and so for me, the grief period lasted years. It lasted years. For other people, it isn't like that. But I was always hopeful, and I was always a romantic. I mean, I have to admit to you now that I love the Hallmark Channel, and I watch all those romance stories on there, and I really do love that. And that kind of thing is what sort of got me through reading books that were hopeful, and watching programs that were hopeful. I didn't really go for down kind of experiences. I wanted to be up for myself. But look, you're only human, and there's just so much that you can take. So that's my story. Am I better today? Yes, I am better today. But there was a turning point, and that turning point stayed in my mind, and that was the time at the gym when that man and I thought, oh my goodness, I do still have those feelings, and I still have those needs as a woman to go out there and be with someone and be with a man. So
let's talk about those needs a little bit. When we see ourselves as someone's wife, we, in some ways, shape or form, turn off that a little bit because we have the one man. We're not thinking about other men. And now you have to go from the one man mentality for all those years to the, maybe this guy. And I think in my mind, of course, not being in your shoes, I think that would be the hardest shift, is after the loyalty, after the long time, not really thinking of ever when you're gone, I'm going to find someone else. You know what I mean? Like, your mind isn't there. So when they're gone, and then now you have to think about someone else, or that possibility is there. What kind of shift was that for you? Because it doesn't sound like you were looking at the time. It just kind of all of a sudden reawakened. Is that true?
It really did. It came as a surprise. It came as a surprise that I would have those feelings for someone on the street, someone that I just met, because it was a number of years, and I just thought, this is not going to happen to me. I'm not going to meet anyone like that. I don't think I even want to meet someone like that, and it was just this complete surprise. And I remember driving home from the gym that day, talking to myself in the car and saying, hey, I was attracted to that guy. I spent time looking at him, departing the scene. I noticed his smile. So that was sort of an indication. I was sort of having this self-awareness that, I am a woman, and that I am attracted to someone else, and I can be attracted to someone else. And I sort of felt nervous about that. Like, how would I handle that? That's I haven't dated since I was, like 18 years old, this is a long time. And how do I, and I would read, online pointers and tips on what to do. And I have a cousin who was very helpful, and she would say, well, they're nervous too, Susan. Be kind to anyone that you might meet, this guy, from the dating scene or something, because they're just as unsteady as you are with their feelings and so forth. And I said, okay, because I didn't look at it that perspective, that it was all my problem. It was all me, and they were just out there doing their thing, and they knew exactly how to handle themselves. So it was a new discovery, and I don't regret having it. If it had been the other way around, I would have wanted my husband to find someone to love him and live life with him. I wouldn't want him to be alone. Not that I think he would. I think he would have been moved on much quicker than I. Do I think men have an advantage? I do. I do think they have an advantage for some reason, because they're the ones that sort of set the tone for a relationship, and you sort of, I do feel that, you have to be approved, but maybe they feel that a woman has to approve them too. I don't know. I've never gone into what a man's thinking, although I would like to delve into that. I think that's something of interest, but I'm looking at it from the woman's perspective. But it did happen, and I'm glad it did, because it gave me inspiration to write that book. It gave me a hopefulness. It gave me an interest in what I ate and what I wore. And my granddaughter Abigail will say, I just counted, Mom, you have 32 lipsticks, And I said, oh, well, one for every day of the month, Abigail, kind of thing. So I did take more of an interest, I think. And that's important. I think you need to take care of yourself, and you have to look optimistically at life in general, or, what's going to happen. You're going to sit in a rocking chair on a porch? No, 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 no. That's not for me.
How did that affect your self-image? What journey did you take in terms of looking at yourself as a woman at the age you were, maybe the comfort level you were in your marriage? I'm sure you took care of yourself. You're a lovely woman. I mean, my audience can't see you, but I can see that you're a lovely woman and you take care of yourself. But how did that play out in your mind, being single again, and how you felt about yourself and how you wanted to present yourself once you kind of got through that grieving period?
Well, in some ways, when you're thinking of meeting someone, you want to look your best, right? You want to look your best because you're trying to attract someone. You're trying to attract someone to you. So that was part of that health initiative, part of, looking your best and taking care of yourself and eating properly. And I think that a woman's attractive starts from the inside and works its way out. And so I did take that kind of approach, and thus I have 32 lipsticks. But I think it's important for a woman to get up every morning, get herself together. And even if it was a workout outfit, believe me, every workout outfit I have, the tops match, it's all coordinated, the socks go all the way down. If I go to the gym, I want to look nice in my outfit. So I think that's important for women to understand that you've got it. It isn't, I hate to use the word marketing, but in some ways it is, because you're going out in the world and you want people to notice you and take notice of you. So I do think you need to do that. I realized that when I went out in the street and walked down to where our mail comes in our development in little boxes, I didn't go out without the lipstick on, because who might be at that mailbox? I didn't, And in fact, when it came to joining a gym, even though we have one right in our community place, I chose to join a gym that was not there right in the community, because when I wanted to be out and away from people I knew, and in a more open, I can't say not judgmental, because I think men judge women just like women judge men, but I went to a different area. It's important, and you want to be noticed. You want to be noticed. You want someone to notice you, or you want to smile. I especially was frowning a lot. And I would say to myself, no, you have to smile. You're going to go up to the desk, and there's a couple of gentlemen at the desk checking in. Make sure you say, good morning, everyone, and you smile. And that's that kind of, put yourself out there kind of thing. Not that I was handing out business cards. So by the way, if you're looking for someone here, here's my card. It was being more open and more welcoming. And so that's part of it. And people, I think, around me started to notice, or, oh, you got your hair cut different. That looks nice on you. Or, oh, I really like you in that bright colored shirt you wore the other day. And then people start to notice that. So it is from the inside out. I think I'm a good person and a caring person. That's what a person needs to feel about themselves, that I'm a person of great worth and great value, and I have a lot to offer. And believe that, because every woman does, and they have a lot to offer. And if you feel that you are lacking in some of these offerings, then develop them. And learn different things, join different things, read different ways of doing things. If you aren't a cook, become a cook. Get some. My mother always would say, a way to catch a man is through his stomach. If you can make a good meal, you'll find a guy. Well, she was a good cook, and I learned from her, and I got Kenny, my husband. He always would say, "What's for dinner?" So anything that would make life with another person more exciting for them, you can bring that to the table. It's all optimistic. It's the way you look at it. that's what I try to do every day.
So now you mentioned before we hit play, I think it was before we hit record, that you had kind of gone out a little bit and done like the online dating thing. Why don't you share a little bit of what that journey was like for you? Because you and I both, dating had nothing to do with online. You had to like be places and meet people face to face. You had to be somewhere and like physically see someone. But now there's this whole phenomenon where people are kind of expected to live on this online world, right? Like you said, marketing themselves in a completely different way. You have to decide how you want to describe yourself and what are your interests and all of these things. And even my daughters who were in their 20s, they tried it for a while and they were like, I don't like this at all. It's very odd. And some people will reach out to you and then ghost you. And so what was your experience like in that online? And are you still doing things like that?
Yeah. I think I would do online again. I did it for a while and I met some nice gentlemen, but nothing came of it. I would say that it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor. It takes a lot of time and commitment because you could be sitting at the computer returning someone's message or email or whatever for hours. I mean, you can become a very
like a professional dating site person.
yeah, I mean, you could become not a couch potato, but you could become, you're a computer potato here, and it's interesting. And in the book, there are a couple of dates that I used from my own experience that were put in there to show that even Lila is an extremely talented and attractive woman, but she's not having a great deal of success. She is. It's not even that you would look at her. Oh, she'll have no problem finding a guy. She's very attractive and blah blah blah. That's not true. That yes, it's nice to be attractive. That's helpful, but it doesn't guarantee anything. So what I found sometimes in a couple of the dates that I went on is I became their therapist. They would tell me about either the woman that they were married to that was, a witch or so, or they would talk about even their children, problems they had with their children and everything. And I have a scene in the book about that. And I was interested in listening to them and their problems and everything. And I am a doctor, but I am not a psychologist. I am a doctor of education. So, I had a little bit of psychology, but, it ended after they were 18 years old because it was adolescents I was working with. And I didn't want to be a therapist. I wanted to be seen as someone who might be a potential date or companion or something. But oftentimes men might be lonely and they have, they're not open to sharing their feelings with their buddies or their immediate family. And here's this stranger that really doesn't know you, and you open up to them. And so I had a number of dates, if you want to call them, meetings, coffee dates and whatnot with men. And they tended to open up like that to me. And I was grateful that they were comfortable enough with me to express this. But, and I listened and I tried, I certainly wasn't going to be judgmental. I offered some solutions that might be possible. And then we would shake hands and that was it. That was the therapy session and I didn't get paid for it. It was over and it was over. And there wasn't a follow-up with a lot of those guys, there wasn't a follow-up. So, the dating, there's a one-time outing, you're having a coffee, you're talking about your life. I'm trying to be general about it. And then I'm getting something more specific. So it doesn't always work out, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't go out with someone. But you learn to be a little bit more selective. In the beginning, I think you're open to anyone and everyone that's, writing to you. And then you're realizing, that this particular man seems to be very nice, but I really don't think we're going to hit it off. In fact, I remember going out with a guy. If I had a checklist we had many things in common. We both played the piano. We both owned interior boutiques. Part of our interior design business is we had a little handcrafted boutique shop, and we had jewelry and pottery and everything that we would sell to our clients. And he had one in a different town. And I thought if I had a checklist, I would check off every single box. And yet nothing happened with that gentleman. So I think there has to be a chemistry. There has to be some sort of attraction that draws you to that person, like I was drawn to the man in the gym. That has to be there, that they try to match you up on all these different levels. Yeah, you like to go to restaurants, you like to go to movies, you like to, well, who doesn't? Who doesn't like to do those things? But I think that it's something else that's, I think, beyond the control of science. There's something in that man-woman connection that has to come out. And if it doesn't, after 30 dates, it might not, but try another 30 and see what happens. My sister I have another sister who was going through a divorce, and she was out there at a similar time, and she did find a guy. It took her a while, it took her years, but she did find a really nice gentleman, and she's happy with him. So I know that it's possible, and you have to keep plugging away, but I don't think it's all computer. I think it's maybe in your church or synagogue, going to groups there that there's a lot of social activities in those venues. And I think sometimes taking a course, in an area that you're interested in. There's always adult education course places, and go someplace where you're interested, because then that gentleman is interested obviously in the same thing, and maybe that will lead to something. So it's difficult. It's not easy, and it's persistence. There's a lot of persistence, and you're taking a risk, and it might not work out. And some people I might never find someone. I might not, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop looking, for that. So,
how do you maintain that hope for you, Susan? What is it that keeps you engaged in the positive hope that there is someone out there that you would be able to have as an enjoyable and loving companion?
Well, I guess it's the the romanticism. I read a lot, all kinds of books, but when I'm feeling down or I'm feeling less hopeful, I have a day of less hopeful, boy, I go and I pick up that Nora Roberts, or I pick up in my little queue. I joined the Romance Writers of America local chapter, because I read a lot of the books that those authors create. And when I'm down, I do that. But then someone might say, so-and-so met a man, on Match.com, and it looks like it's serious. And I think to myself, well, that's great. That means it can happen, and through their stories, I sort of get a lift. But it's not easy, and the older you are, the less gentlemen are available. It's just the way it is. It's numbers, and that's what happens. But I don't have a perfect solution. If I did, I would be telling you, Gina, Harry's here, he's waiting for me. We're going out to lunch, Harry is not here, I don't know everything, but I've learned a lot. And just from being open on the topic, and that my mother found someone she adored she was married. She's 92 right now. She was married to this gentleman for 30 some odd years. And she tells me that he was the love of her life. And she was married to my father for 21 and for this other gentleman for 30 some odd years. And she was very happy with him. And she was 41. And she had 3 children to support when my father passed away. So I know it's possible. And it certainly was possible for in fact, I was thinking of my younger sister, that I might have a book one day based sort of on her romance, because she was very young when her husband's plane went into the ground on a cloudy day. And she had an 18-month-old child around that age. And her husband, who she's been married to for 30 some odd years, was the Marine who came to tell her the benefits that she would have. And that's who she ended up marrying.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's who she had for 30 some odd years. And she never wasn't looking for it. She was miserable. She went back to school. And here comes this handsome guy, um, who tells her, I'm sorry that's happened to you. I'm here to help you through this. Here are the directions, the benefits of what we'd have to do, blah, 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 blah. And that began a relationship, because he was not married at the time. And 30 some odd years later, 2 children later, and was a wonderful father to her little boy who was left fatherless. So that I was thinking of as maybe a romantic idea for a book. And she was very, very young. But I'm trying to concentrate my stories on people who are a little bit older. We older women, some help and maybe some tips. In fact, sometimes in this book that I've written, and now there's you, I describe her outfits and why she's wearing that particular top, because she wanted to bring out one of her better features. So she is wearing a top that is a cow neck, as opposed to a high-collared round one. Or she's 5'4", which is a little taller than I am, and she weighs a lot less. And she's wearing an outfit that she thinks will make her feel taller, and her legs look longer. And that was just my subtle way of telling women, there's a lot of things out there to make the most of yourself, a lot of tips out there, ways of dressing yourself to make the most of what God gave you. So that was just my subtle way. That's all I can say.
It's interesting because I think everybody's journey is obviously different, right?
Absolutely.
Some people are happy to stay single. Some people really don't want to be alone and they're looking for someone. And I was curious, how does the role of just friendship, as you enjoy these different men that you meet, does that in some capacity kind of fulfill a certain need just to have a male companion sometimes to spend time with and talk to?
Yes, I do believe that. If you can have a buddy that's a guy, why not? He can go to those weddings with you, and you don't have to sit at the table when everyone's dancing. Or he can go to the theater with you. You can be a couple when it's a couple's night out. Yes, but what was that line that when Harry met Sally, you can't be friends? I think Billy Crystal says, you can never be friends with a woman, you basically want to, what with them? But I do think there are men that can be a friend and you can develop a friendship with them. I haven't personally come across that, but why not? I know that there are women that have good friends and they go places with them and they're buddies. But what happens when that guy meets, his significant other, that the friendship is hard to maintain. It's easier to maintain friendships with women. If you're a woman, it's easier to maintain it. But friendship, I think, in that attraction to another guy, you have to feel that friendship. You sort of have to, I think that means being comfortable with someone, not being on the edge of your seat the whole time. That you can be you and say what you think in a respectful and kind way, and they'll understand it even if they might not agree with you. So I think, isn't that what companionship is? One of my sisters will say, well, he's my best friend. Her husband, my best friend. So I think that there has to be an element of friendship there. It can't just be attraction. But that attraction, I think, even engenders that friendship. It starts it off as a friendship. So, yeah, I think friendship is an important component.
That's wonderful. So as we kind of are coming to the top of the hour, Susan, there are a lot of things that we've talked about. We've talked about grief. We've talked about what it feels like to be alone and how the journey is not as predictable as we'd like it to be, but there are things that you can put into place that can help you make it better. Now, the one thing that we didn't talk about is what those things were that you can put into place when you know, right? If you like, what can a woman do when she knows it's coming? What were those things that you did to kind of prepare yourself to become that single woman?
I really did not right away accept the fact that that would happen to me. And you're talking about prior to death, right?
Yeah.
So how you prepare yourself. Well, we did talk about where would I live? What would happen to me? I had a job at the time. So if you don't have a job, I would say start thinking about either volunteer work or a part-time job. Doesn't have to be a full-time job, but to move yourself out of that house, a reason to get up every morning, um, go out in the world and, present yourself and interact and offer what you can offer. Financial, I hate to be like that, but there are financial considerations. If you weren't a person that handled the bills, well, here are the bills and here's how you're going to have to handle them. I think that is important. It's hard to have that conversation. It's often with tears rolling down your cheeks, even though your husband is explaining in detail. Like I said, my husband had a notebook and we went through a notebook, and he did that with the children so that there was a backup if I didn't remember something. And that is important so that you know how to handle those other aspects of your life when unfortunately you're going to be that. And then I think that, and I can't say what people's grief period will be. It could be, I've known people who remarried in 2 years and they were fine. After 2 years, they met someone and ready to move on. But I do think that you need to take care of yourself. So I think besides all those financial and business matters, you need to think of your health because you have a lot to offer the rest of your family, your children, and you owe it to yourself to be the healthiest person you can be. And I'm not saying be a health nut and don't ever have ice cream, because certainly I indulge in ice cream. But I think that you have to be a little bit wiser because you realize that we're only here for a really short time and we need to make the most of it. And if you want to better yourself on all different planes, whether it's through education courses, many of them are free, going to lectures or your libraries. I happen to be lucky enough to live across from a community college where there's a lot of things going on there. Take advantage of that. Get out in the world, meet people, join organizations, but don't do something that you're uncomfortable with, that you don't enjoy just to be there, that you dread going to. It should be something that's uplifting to you, that makes you feel that when you've left the scene, you're a better person because you were there. So that kind of social, educational kind of realm you want to expose yourself to. If you're a reader, there's loads of self-help books. There's lots of great romances out there to read. They're called mature romances if you're in the 40s and over. So there's a lot of those that are helpful. And I think that's a step to take. And then I think, and that all builds your self-worth. You're feeling that, I have a lot to offer. I know about this. I know about that. I can do this. I can do that. That kind of thing. Take up golf if you like golf. I love to bowl. I like going bowling, especially when my grandchildren ask me to take them. So out there with things that you enjoy, not because you're told to do it or you're supposed to do it, but because you're driven to do it. Something that makes you feel more alive after you've participated. So that's that business side of your life, that social, educational, expanding your knowledge bank life. And then you've got to be, I have to say it, if you want to meet someone, you have to be proactive. You have to be a risk taker and go to a singles nights out. Try to bring another single friend for support. I've done that. The online dating services, there are even matchmaking services, that are out there. If you're adventurous enough, you can try. It's in the book. The character Lila is given a birthday gift by her partner and her business partner and her daughter to a matchmaking services. And she doesn't want to go, but it was a birthday gift. So she goes. And that's how this all, the story starts to unfold from there. Be adventurous, but and you might find that you do something that is uncomfortable the first time, and but maybe the second time it's just not as uncomfortable. You're starting to feel a little bit better about it, and the third time you're thinking to yourself, I think I might really like this. Now, if you're hating it for all three times you try it, it's not for you. It's probably not for you, and you're going to move on to something else. But so I think it's very, basic, your business, how you're going to take care of your life. And that might include jobs. And then you're going through that social thing. And then you're ending up using the tools that are out there for single people to meet. Some people I know have gone on cruises, single cruises, all by themselves. And for Susan Etkin, that's far-fetched for her right now. I don't think she could do that. But they did it. They went on a single cruise for a whole week with a bunch of strangers. And all of them looking to meet someone that would make the rest of their life wonderful. So those kinds of things, I think.
Interesting idea. I mean, I'm a total social butterfly, so I go places and I don't mind if I don't know anybody, but that's different because there's kind of an agenda, you know what I mean? So it's a bit different. But as we come to the top of the hour, I would love to have you share just kind of three things that if a woman were sitting in front of you and she was going through this journey or had been through this journey, what three things would you share with her that you would really want her to take to heart? They could be helpful tips. They could just be encouragement for your own life. What three things would those be?
Well, first I would say to her, there is a possibility, and I'm putting this possibility down, and that there will be for you love after loss, and that your life is not over because you've lost your mate. That's number one. I think that's important. And the second thing I think would be that you have you are in control of your life, and that you can make it wonderful and hopeful, and that if you look at your glass half empty, that's what it's going to be. But if you look at your glass half full and have that control over your life, that you can grow even at an older age. You can grow, you can develop, you can have a brighter future if you take initiatives, take those steps. I think that's it. And then I guess the third thing is that if there's a failure, well, that old saying, dust yourself off, pull up those boots again and get back up there and get out there, because nothing's going to happen to you if you're a recluse, if you sit in your house and you don't do anything outside of your life. So there is love after loss, but not always. There's a possibility of love after loss. It's not a guarantee, but be optimistic about it, because that optimism is in the inside and it radiates out. I believe. Is that helpful? Do you think that sounds logical, Gina?
It really does.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that when someone is in that place of loss, it's hard to imagine it. And I would think that it's okay to allow yourself to go through that journey, but maybe not get stuck in the hopelessness or the sadness, but trying to find that sliver of light and just cling to that hope. It says what it sounds like was important for you.
It was to be active and optimistic. And I found actually writing very helpful for me, starting to write that story. And I have two others in the work, all similar, about people who have been either dumped, or one is someone who doesn't follow the parents' path, that she's falls in love with someone they don't like, that kind of thing. But it's the right person for her. So she decides to take control of her life and let her parents' advice move to the wayside. But that's, I don't want to say that it's a guarantee, that
Right.
there will be love after loss. I don't want to say, oh yeah, if you don't find it, there's something wrong with you. No, it's not true. There's a luck involved. There's an element of luck, and so
Serendipity.
yeah, serendipity. Happenstance is what Lila, the character in my book, says. I thought I'd meet someone through happenstance,
Yeah.
and she does and she doesn't, but be hopeful, optimistic. I think that's the key.
Wonderful.
And live your life, because it's a gift, right?
Yes.
It is a gift and we should live it.
Wonderful.
Okay.
I want to thank you so much, Susan, for coming on to my show and sharing your light and your hopeful message with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been very nice.
So today I have been speaking with Susan S. Etkin. She is a avid reader, lover of books, and a writer. She has written And Now There's You. If you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 126, I will have hyperlinks to Susan's website and to Susan's book, and you can get connected with her and find out about those new books when they come out. And while you're there, will you please give me your email and your first name? I have a gift for you for joining my tribe. As always, I would love to have you head to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or Stitcher. Please subscribe. Please rate and comment. The more women that get involved in that process, the more women can find these hopeful messages like Susan's, where the message is you are a person of great worth and great value, and you have a lot to offer. And I want to thank you again for trusting me with your ears and your time every single week, and for sharing a cup of something wonderful with me and my guests each week. I look forward to talking to you all again next week. Until then, have a wonderful week, my friends. Take care. Bye-bye.